She woke before sunrise every day, carrying a small bag of breakfast to a forgotten old man no one else seemed to see. People passed him like he didn't exist, but she didn't. To her, he mattered. Until one morning, everything changed. The same neighbors who ignored her kindness began to whisper. Their stares grew colder. And then, without warning, official vehicles rolled into her street. Uniformed officers stepped out, heading straight for her door. She had done nothing wrong. Or had she? Why would an act of simple kindness bring authority to her doorstep? And what did they know about the old man that no one else did? Every morning before school, she followed the same quiet routine. At just 12 years old, Maya moved through her neighborhood with a calm determination most adults overlooked. While others rushed past the cracked sidewalks and faded buildings, she noticed the things people chose to ignore: the silence, the loneliness, the invisible lives. At the corner near an old bus stop sat a man no one spoke to. His clothes were worn, his posture tired, and his presence treated like a shadow. People crossed the street to avoid him. Some whispered. Others simply looked away. But Maya never did. To her, he wasn't invisible, he was human. She started small. A piece of bread one day, a warm drink the next. Soon it became routine. Every morning she brought him breakfast, offering it with a quiet smile. He rarely spoke, but his eyes carried something heavy, something unspoken. At first, no one paid attention, but over time, the looks began to change. Neighbors watched a little longer. Their silence felt different, sharper, as if her kindness had crossed an invisible line she didn't even know existed. Maya didn't understand it yet. But something about this simple act was about to turn her quiet routine into something far more dangerous. At first, it was just whispers. Low voices trailing behind her as she walked away from the bus stop. Words she couldn't fully hear, but could definitely feel. The same people who once ignored her now watched her closely, their eyes lingering a little too long. Then came the questions. One afternoon, as she handed the old man his usual breakfast, a woman across the street called out sharply, her tone cutting through the quiet morning. She didn't ask with kindness. Her voice carried suspicion, as if Maya had done something wrong simply by being there. Others began to gather, their expressions hard, their silence louder than any words. Maya felt it, the shift. What was once invisible kindness had suddenly become something people judged, something they didn't approve of. The next day, things got worse. As she approached the corner, she noticed someone standing nearby, a man in a uniform. He wasn't speaking, just watching. His presence alone made the air feel heavier. Maya slowed her steps, her heart beginning to race. She had done nothing wrong. She knew that. But the way he looked at her made her question everything. Still, she moved forward. She always did. She placed the small bag of food beside the old man, offering her usual quiet smile. But before she could turn away, the voice came, firm, cold, impossible to ignore. "Wait." She froze. The officer stepped closer, his gaze fixed on her. He asked questions, but not the kind that felt normal. Where was she from? Why was she here every day? Did she know this man? His tone wasn't curious, it was accusing. Maya's words came out small, uncertain. She tried to explain, tried to tell him it was just breakfast, just kindness. But the more she spoke, the less it seemed to matter. Around them, people had stopped to watch. Some shook their heads. Others whispered again. No one stepped in. No one defended her. And then something changed. The officer's expression hardened. He turned to the old man, studying him more closely now, as if seeing him for the first time. The tension in the air thickened, stretching into something Maya couldn't understand, but could definitely feel. Without another word, the officer stepped back and spoke into his radio. Maya didn't know what he said, but within minutes everything escalated. More vehicles arrived. Doors slammed. Boots hit the pavement with urgency. The quiet corner that once held nothing but silence and routine was now filled with authority, attention, and something far more serious than she ever imagined. Maya stood there, frozen, her small hands clenched tightly at her sides. She looked at the old man, hoping for some kind of answer, but he remained still. His expression unreadable, his silence heavier than ever before. What was happening? Why were they here? And more importantly, what had she just stepped into without even realizing it? The street fell into a heavy silence as more officers surrounded the small corner. Their movements were sharp, controlled, like they already believed something was wrong. But Maya hadn't done anything. She stood there, barely breathing, her eyes darting between the uniforms and the old man who still hadn't said a word. Then it happened. One of the officers stepped forward and grabbed her arm. Not gently, not with concern, but with force that made her flinch. "What are you doing here?" The voice demanded again, louder this time, as if her silence was guilt. I was just bringing food." Her voice trembled, barely holding together. But no one listened. The crowd had grown now. Phones were out, eyes were watching, and still no one stepped in. The same people who had seen her kindness every morning now stood there, saying nothing, letting it happen. The officer tightened his grip. In that moment, fear rushed through her like a wave, not because she had done something wrong, but because she suddenly understood it didn't matter. Her small act of kindness had turned into suspicion. Her presence had become a problem, and her voice felt invisible. Then, just as another officer moved closer, something unexpected broke the silence. A voice, weak but firm. "Let her go." Every head turned. For the first time, the old man moved. Slowly, he pushed himself up, his frail body trembling. But his eyes were no longer distant. They were sharp, focused, watching everything. The officers froze. Something shifted instantly. Their posture changed. Their expressions no longer harsh but uncertain. The man reached into his coat with shaking hands. For a second, everything felt like it might spiral out of control. The tension snapped tight, every breath held, every movement watched. And then he pulled something out. Not a weapon, an old, worn identification. The moment the nearest officer saw it, his face drained of color. His grip on Maya loosened. The entire energy of the scene flipped in seconds, because the man they had ignored, the man they had treated like nothing, was someone they never expected. And suddenly the question wasn't about Maya anymore. It was about how they had all been so wrong. It? The tension dissolved as quickly as it had erupted. The officers stepped back, their voices no longer sharp, their authority suddenly uncertain. The man's identity changed everything. What was once suspicion turned into respect almost instantly. But for Maya, the shift didn't feel like relief. It felt confusing and deeply unfair. Moments ago, she was just a girl being treated like a problem. Now, without a single word from her, everything had changed because of who he was. The old man was carefully escorted away, no longer ignored, no longer invisible. This time, people made space for him. They watched with a different kind of silence, one filled with realization instead of judgment. But Maya remained where she was, her small hands still trembling, her heart still trying to catch up with what had just happened. No one apologized. The same crowd that once whispered now avoided her gaze. The same voices that questioned her were suddenly quiet. And that silence said more than anything else ever could. The next morning, the corner felt different. The old man was gone. The space where he used to sit was empty, but not forgotten. Maya stood there for a moment, holding the same small bag of breakfast, unsure of what to do next. But one thing had changed inside her. She understood now that kindness alone doesn't always protect you, that sometimes people don't see your actions. They see your identity. And in a world where judgment comes faster than truth, even the smallest act can be misunderstood. Yet she didn't stop. Because if she did, then what would that say about the world we live in? This wasn't just her story. It's a reflection of a reality many face every single day, where being seen, being judged, and being treated differently happens before a single word is spoken. So the question is, how many more moments like this are happening around us, unnoticed, unquestioned, and what are we choosing to do about it?